Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk about the greatest French symphony. And I am not joking. This really is the greatest French symphony. Not necessarily the most popular or the best known, but the greatest. And we're going to discover why it's the greatest. The work I am referring to is Albert Roussel's Symphony Number 2. Now, Roussel, to the extent his symphonies are popular at all, is well known for his Symphony Number 3. Number 3. That's the one that everybody plays. Nobody plays number 2. Very, very seldom. It's vanishingly rare, but it is an extraordinary, amazing piece of music. It dates from right around the period of World War I, and it represents his coming of age, his maturity as a composer, where he finally threw off the shackles of Debussyan impressionism and found his own style. But he did it in a work which is absolutely extraordinary in terms of formal mastery and emotional depth. This is not a happy symphony. This is a dark, brooding symphony. It's shot with dissonance, but at the same time, you hear that typical rhythmic verve that's characteristic of Roussel, and those wonderful haunting melodies that sort of thread their way through the thickets of chromatic harmony with which they're surrounded. The symphony shocked audiences when it was first premiered on account of its perceived austerity. I mean, it uses a big orchestra with 2 harps and lots of percussion. It's not exactly austere like, Bruckner is austere. You know what I mean? It's got luscious coloristic moments. But those moments are exceptions to the rule. A lot of the piece is scored simply for the string section. It has a definite severity of tone, and that's what got people. It ends quietly. That, of course, is the ultimate curse when you're a modern symphony. Where are you going to put it on the program? Nobody wants to hear symphonies that end quietly. Well, they do occasionally, but even Brahms' Third Symphony, it's his least often performed because it ends quietly. It's a problem. I've seen the Brahms programmed most often on the first half of a program, so you could put something lively that ends loudly on the second half. It's not possible really to do because this symphony is over 40 minutes long. It's a bigger piece, and it really is emotionally a draining piece. When it's over, it's over. You don't want anything to come after it. Now, of course, we listen to things like Mahler Ninth, which is an hour and 20 minutes and ends quietly, and nobody seems to have a problem. Or Bruckner's Ninth, which is incomplete and ends with the Adagio, as you know, on the second half. But those are even longer. And so the quiet ending somehow is forgiven in the fulfilling, all-consuming experience of it all. But this one is exactly 42 minutes long, and it ends quietly. And you always feel, well, maybe something could come after, That makes it very, very difficult to program. But beyond that, as I said, it's the emotional character of the music. It's austerity and severity, which really do make it a little bit of a concentrated listen, shall we say. That's not to say it doesn't have ingratiating melodies. I'm going to play you a few. But maybe the best way to categorize this symphony, let's go back to our food analogy, shall we? Now, when I was talking about Martineau, remember Martineau? We were talking about his music. I performed, whatever I do here, enunciated a video called In Praise of Fluff. Fluff, here it is. Marshmallow fluff. I was talking about that fluff is good stuff. And Martineau is good stuff, even if it is fluff, some of it. Not all of it, but some of it. But this is fluff, and this is not Roussel's Second Symphony. Up until the point where he wrote it, many, many French works were considered fluffy. or were considered fluffy by people who weren't French in any case. I don't think Gounod's oratorio, Mors et Vita, or whatever that thing is called, life and death, and, would be considered fluff. But, people who weren't French might have just thrown it in there in the fluff category. So, French music is fluff. German music is spam, a heavy, processed pork product stuff that comes in a loaf and sits in your stomach like lead. It is just the opposite of fluff. Now, just as not all French music is fluff, not all German music is spam. At its lightest, German music could possibly be, like Johann Strauss maybe, Vienna sausage. That's a possibility, but it's still one of those sort of processed meat things, you know what I mean? So Roussel is neither of these things, and that may be why his symphony tends to fall between the cracks. Roussel was a seaman for 7 years, a midshipman in the French Navy, so let's say that Roussel's music is more like, well, Mackerel. That seems to work pretty good. A nice can of salty mackerel. That is, it has a certain, aqueous, isn't that the word? Watery, yes. A certain aqueous fluidity, but a harmonic saltiness and tartness to it that I think suits the can of mackerel particularly well. Now, of course, this is a Spanish can of mackerel. Here's the Spanish label here. It's Mackerel. But, one Romance language is like all the others, so it doesn't matter that this isn't French. Anyway, this is Roussel, and mackerel, as some of you may know, is certainly an acquired taste. It really is. It's like anchovies. You got to get used to it. And that's the same thing, I think, is true of Roussel's Second Symphony. The form of the symphony is in 3 movements. A 2 outer movements, which are alternately slow introduction leading to quick movements, and a scherzo-like central movement that also alternates a moderate tempoed scherzo with a slower trio section. The form is that of the Franck symphony, that tradition, that is cyclical form, themes that recur in each movement, and a motto overall, which governs the argument of the entire symphony. Now, I'm going to play you the motto, and the motto comes from a couple examples I'll just show you. Here is the first time you hear the motto theme in the first movement, in the basses. Now, this is an excellent recording. This is the Orchestre de Paris with Christoph Eschenbach on Ondine. It's a marvelous performance. Listen to the basses after this first outburst, and you will hear the motto theme of the entire symphony. Very, very simple. After so much sort of chromatic and wandering and dark, mystery at the opening, this marvelously embryonic and instantly memorable little motive pops in the basses. Here it is. Did you catch that? You can hum it. Da da dum ba da 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 da. That's not the end note. Isn't that? It's not ba. It's like the. I don't know. It's odd, and it's infinitely malleable because you can change the actual intervals, and it still remains completely recognizable. In fact, at the climax of the finale, that motto theme turns into a march. Let me take the booklet out so there's no glare. And you can hear it's the motto quite clearly, but it works quite marvelously as a march. Here, at the climax of the march, in the finale, is the motto theme transformed. See? I wasn't kidding. So the argument of the symphony is actually rather easy to follow. But these movements are very spacious, and there's a lot of slow and dark music in them. And as I said, the end eventually is also slow. However, in between them is the most wonderful, wonderful scherzo-like thing with a moderately tempoed main section and a slow, mostly for strings, middle section that rises to a really anguished climax before the return of the scherzo. Dark emotions run through this whole symphony. And usually in classical music, that's a good thing. But for some reason in French music, we don't like our French music too dark. We want it to sound more like Fluff. And if not Spam, well, maybe Mackerel. Who knows? Anyway, let me play you another superb performance and excerpt. This one is the Royal Scottish National Orchestra on Naxos, conducted by Stéphane Deneuve. And here is the opening of that scherzo, which I think is one of the most haunting evocations of pastoral mood that you will ever hear in any symphony by anybody ever. Here it is. I just love that. And you know what's so extraordinary about it, and some people might find it frustrating, is that that opening theme never returns in the same form ever again. You always recognize it. It's like the motto. You always recognize it when you hear it. But the notes and the harmonies are always a little bit different. The music is perpetually developing. And that may also be a reason why this is a difficult symphony, because it is in constant motion, constant development of its main themes and motives. And so you really have to pay attention to it. It's not light listening. It really repays intense, serious listening. Oh, what a good thing. Don't we love that? But that, of course, you, my friends, are all intense and serious listeners. So there's no question that you're going to get absolutely everything there is to be gotten out of it. Now let's talk about recordings, because I've already seen two. There haven't been many. There are four major ones that we need to talk about that are recommendable. There are a few others. Gennady Rozhdestvensky did one in Russia. You don't have to pay any attention to it. Marek Janowski did a Roussel cycle on RCA originally. Not very good, not very well recorded. And his second symphony, I think, he didn't know it that well. It was facile and I think a little too fast, especially in that second movement. Cannot be too fast. You can do it slowly, but you cannot take it too quickly. And then Charles Dutoit did a cycle for Erato. Also, not special at all. I'm only going to talk about the four really, really good performances of the Second Symphony, because this is just not the kind of work where you should settle for the second tier. There's no point. There's just no point. So the first one is this one, this lovely one with Pierre Dervaux and the Concert Cologne. Now, the Concert Cologne, one of the venerable, old French orchestra, like the Lamoureux Orchestra and the Paris Conservatoire. You get to hear those wonderful French sonorities, and he takes the central movement really slowly. Slowly. Some might find it too slow, really. It really sort of is, but if you know it, you hear so much detail. It's so interesting that it's okay. And the rest of the performances are wonderful. This set, of course, this twofer is, of course, out of print. You'll notice it says EMI and not Warner. Probably it will show up somewhere, sometime, some century again. But this is definitely one that if you have it, you should listen to it. It's not bad. It's pretty good. Really very good. My favorite one, though, and I still think on balance the best of all the recordings, is Jean Martineau. This is such a great performance. The sonics are not fully up to modern standards, but wow, what a great performance. This is with the Orchestre National de l'ORTF, the French radio and television. And it's just, these are just great performances. Martineau's Roussel was special. Very, very special. And this is coupled with the Spider's Feast, the complete ballet. This is also errato. And if you can still find it, it's in the big Martineau box, of course, you know. It's absolutely spectacular. Probably your best bet overall. Still, there are two modern recordings which come within this close to Martineau in excellence. One, of course, was this Eschenbach one on Ondine, which is absolutely splendid. And if you can still get it, I mean, get it. Don't worry about it. It's coupled with Bacchus and Ariadne, Suites 1 and 2, which is basically the complete ballet. A wonderful coupling and splendid performances. And again, it's with the Orchestre de Paris. And finally, Stéphane Deneuve with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra on Naxos. This one comes with Pour une fête de printemps, the symphonic poem, and the Suite en Fa, the Suite in F. Wonderful works too. So all the couplings are different, enough so that you can get a couple of these and compare them and have other Roussel works, which really, it makes for some terrific, terrific listening. It's wonderful. But however you do it, however you decide to do it, do please consider strongly getting this symphony and sitting down for 40 minutes and just listening. It is such a fantastic piece of music, amazingly crafted, brilliantly argued, and emotionally incredibly gripping. There's nothing else like it in the repertoire. Nothing. It is a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece, and it deserves as much attention as serious music lovers are willing to give it. It truly does. So keep on listening, folks, and thank you for joining me for this small talk about a big work, a major work, the greatest French symphony. Take care. Bye-bye.